It's now my great pleasure to introduce Professor Eddie Obeng. Eddie is the creator of The World After Midnight. He's the founder and learning director of Pentacle, which is a virtual business school. And I guess it's totally appropriate for an online learning guru and pioneer that he's joining us from the UK in real time in his virtual form via his virtual platform QUBE, to provide insights into a new way of learning in today's rapidly changing environment. Are you with us, Eddie?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much for the introduction, Jane. Thank you, everyone. That's me over there in the orange shirt, and standing next to me is a funny little boxy thing, and you're probably wondering what that is and why I'm standing next to a strange dummy. And the reason is because the way I look in real life is a little bit like the funny green boxy avatar. So this is you, the orange one over here. One of my colleagues is turquoise over there. That's Leonardo from Brazil, who's going to be my backup man. And so that's really what it's about. I'm trying to talk to you, but as a square boxy thing. First, let me say how delighted I am to be with you. I have the joy of also being able to see you on the webcam, as you probably noticed. So hello. But far more importantly, I've been listening in and I've been paying attention. I've been listening to the minister, and I managed to listen to the previous presentation. And it sounds to me as if there's a fair amount of change and challenge going on. And then I've gone and done something really wicked. What's that? Well, I made you watch that video. Has anyone yet recovered from that video? If you've recovered, can you just put your hand up? Or if you're still stressed by the pace of change in that video, don't put your hand up if you think you're coming to it. So some hands are going up. Okay. So what happened in that video? Was it sort of the right speed for you? Was it too fast, too slow? Just shout out. I can hear at your end. So if you think about it, for most people, they'll say, yes, it was a little bit too fast. And if we start to explore that and understand why, basically what happened was, when you started watching the video, it didn't seem too fast, did it? It seemed to be going at the right pace. And then slowly it sort of crept up the pace. Am I right? So almost like the curves in the video, it started off really quite low. So if this is the speed on this axis over here, and then over time, it just got faster and faster and faster. And then at the end, I suspect it was a little bit too fast for you. But what was probably also quite amusing about it is when you started, you were quite comfortable reading. And you thought, yes, I can keep up with this. This is fine. And then it started to speed up. So you thought, I better accelerate a bit. And then about here, you started getting a bit stressed. Because you thought, oh my goodness, it's going faster than I can read. Should I bother? And you started getting a bit annoyed. And then towards the end, just as you thought you were going to get the answers, they all zipped past you and you couldn't hear anything. Did that happen to you? Because if that happened to you, that's exactly what we were trying to create. The funny thing is that the bit at the end here, when you were thinking you were going to get the answers, and those 12 rules came up, my guess is you thought to yourself, I'll never remember any of those. And you probably got quite fed up. Because I suspect, like me, you're an oldie. So what happened is when we were at school, when we were learning formally, we were told that we needed to learn everything and put it in our heads. So that meant that we spent our time capturing stuff. So when it was zipping past you, you're going, I can't learn all that. If I did an exam right now to say who can remember all 12 rules, my guess is nobody could. But I'll bet together as a group of 500, we'd probably come up with most of them. And one of the things which has changed is that as we've moved into our modern world, learning is more collaborative. It's collaborative learning. We have to find ways of learning together. But of course, when we were in school, collaborative learning had a special nickname. It was called cheating. So most of us don't go in for that. So what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of an outline of what we're going to cover in the session, and then you can tell me whether you like it or not. So the title was A New Way of Learning. And I've got a bit of a plan, but I really want to focus on what you specifically want. So the first thing I'd like you to do is just look either side of you at the people sitting around the table with you. And then what I'd like you to do, if it's possible, is to spend some time thinking about this particular question. I want you to imagine the next 35 odd minutes is brilliant. You learn all sorts of useful things which help you and transform you. What is it you'd like to learn? What are your greatest hopes for this session I'm running with you? And then on the other side, I want you to imagine that the next 35 minutes is a complete waste of time. What are your greatest fears? What is it which, if I did, would be terrible for you? So I want your hopes and I want your fears on the other side, okay? And I'm going to give you a bit of time. Please talk in trios, so with the people either side of you, and try and figure out what you'd want. And then we've got mics, so I'll capture those and we'll use them to weave into my talk. So we're going to have an interactive virtual session. I'm only going to give you a couple of minutes, so you have to talk to your colleagues really quickly. So over to you. Have a quick discussion in trios. What was your greatest hope? What's your greatest fear? Come up with two or three of them and we'll capture them together. Okay, there's probably about another 30 seconds left, so get your ideas together and make sure you get close to a microphone. Probably about 5 seconds left. Oh, we've run out of time. What a shame. Okay, so if I could sort of have your attention, please, just for a second. So I've been scribbling while you guys were elsewhere. I was busy scribbling my hopes and fears, and mine looks something like I provide you with some ahas and some frameworks and some practical thinking. And my fears were things like lack of interaction, so I'm hoping we'll get that you don't take any notes, because these days we're so used to going to meetings, and the problem is if you take notes, people think you're going to do the work. So people don't take notes and they forget what's happened. And my third biggest fear is what we call zombies, which is people whose bodies are there, but their brains are elsewhere because they're looking at their smartphones. So that was mine. What I'd like to do is capture some of yours if it's at all possible. So should we do it together? I think you've got microphones, so whenever you're ready, people who are running the bits at the other end, please let me know what people want. So can I hear what people would like as their hopes or their fears, if it's at all possible?
So the greatest hopes were to learn something new.
Or anything, random, or just something new? Okay.
Anything.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Things relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding a reason for change.
Okay, great. And were there any fears?
That you'll cut us off too soon writing our notes down. And that technology will fail and we'll have to go to morning tea early.
I don't see why going to tea early is a fear. Great, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, I've done something rather strange there, which is I asked you both for your hopes and your fears. That's one weird thing. But the other weird thing is, as a presenter, normally we don't ask the audience what they actually want. And given the fact I'm a professor, what I should do is I should start by explaining to you why change is important, explain to you what, etc., showing you some really good graphs and charts, and then hoping that you'll take the argument. So what I'm doing is quite strange, asking your hopes and fears. Why would I do such a thing? Is it because I'm a crazy person? Well, probably I'm a crazy person. But if you think about it, it's not because I lack content. It's because in that world we've just looked at, the world after midnight, it's not so much about what I know, but what you collectively learn. So all of a sudden we have to change the way we do things. So part of the reason I'm asking you your hopes and fears is to get you to start to think, to get you to start to get engaged, get you to start being involved, because that's almost more important than the content of what I do. And I'll explain later, because just knowing something is different from making it happen. But the really weird part about it is this bit here about fears. Can you imagine going to one of your team meetings where you're trying to deal with, I don't know, some of your colleagues, and you go in and you say, right, we've got to make some major changes. What's everyone's fear? The problem is if you do that, they might just tell you, and then you're in trouble. So this has got to be the dumbest thing possible on earth. So why am I wasting my time asking you your fears? Well, there's a little secret in this. You remember this we have with the world which is changing all the time? One of the problems is that a lot of things people experience, they will never have experienced before. So whenever you're doing something new, there's a high probability you're about to surprise people. So unsurprisingly, they're scared. Help me. Do you know anybody who wakes up extra early in the morning to work hard with passion on something they think is going to go wrong? No one does that. All the textbooks will tell you that the way to get people to move is to motivate and energize them, and then they'll do new stuff. Now, I have a little problem with this because I don't believe it. In the UK, we have these things called, I don't know if you have them in Victoria, but charity parachute jumps. But basically, the idea is that you get all your friends together, okay, and you persuade them that you should get together, get on a serviceable plane, I'll try and do a plane, take it up to about 3,000 feet, and then jump out. And if your parachute works and everyone lands and everyone's safe and happy, then a lot of money gets given away to a charity. That's basically the idea. So imagine I've been a very inspirational leader and I persuaded you that we must go up in this. But once we're in the plane, I start to continue to be a motivational leader. I say, look, people are giving us this money because they believe in us, putting our necks on the line for these children we're raising money for. So what we should do is, and as we get to 3,000 feet, is to demonstrate how much we care. Look, leave your parachutes behind and just leap forth, and everything will be well. Think of the money we'll raise. Now that's a bit crazy. The safer way of getting you to move through change is actually by reducing your fear level. And that's, guys, why I asked you your fears, because once I understand what you don't want to happen, I can then start to try to remove your fears. It's a really crucial part of learning, because people won't learn as long as they're scared. Now, you might say to yourself, well, that's all very well and good, but how do you remove people's fears? Again, I don't have to teach you anything. I just have to remind you really quickly of how to do this, because we were all taught whilst watching science fiction films. Basically, science fiction films are how you teach people to remove fear. They're all the same. They involve aliens. Aliens' job is to travel millions of light years to come to Earth, basically just to eat you. So imagine that you spotted an alien spaceship which had crash landed somewhere, okay, with lots of sort of steam coming out. If you or I spotted this thing at a distance, what would we do? Would you go towards it? Never, because you know without any training at all that this thing is going to be absolutely horribly dangerous. They never do that in the films. In the films, what happens is they realize it's an alien spacecraft and they run towards it. And once they get there, they see how big this thing is, and usually there are 3 of them, and they say the magic words which are, let's split up. And so they go wandering on their own. And always the same thing happens. No one can find, well, they can't find the aliens until, of course, the music starts, if you've ever watched these films, at which point, all of a sudden, there's a horrible alien thing sort of looking at them, ready to eat them. In the films, of course, they come ready with their laser blasters, but they never shoot the alien. What do? The person who's met the alien calls their friends on their communicator and says, hey, there's an alien. It's all red and blue and slimy, and then they get cut off. Of course, they've just been eaten. So, of course, their friends come running along. Where are you? Can't find anyone except this big blobby alien, of course, with a huge stomach. They never kill it. They take it back to the laboratory and lock it up for study. And, of course, by now it's digesting their friends, so it's not doing anything. So somebody has to keep an eye on it. They always select the wrong person, don't they? The mad scientist or the pot-smoking who falls asleep. At which point the alien gets up, eats them, and then escapes to the slidey doors. And finally, the only way to get rid of the alien is to blow up the whole space station, which is what we call in the business Plan B. Okay? Now, this 5-stage process for anyone going through change is really important. As early as possible, work out what people are going to be worried about. Then, as quickly as possible, if you can, get rid of it. Because the sooner you get rid of it, the happier they are. Once you've done that, if you can't get rid of it completely, make sure you contain it so it doesn't spoil everything else. Make sure you monitor it, and by all means have a plan B. That's the only way you get people to work through change. So if we go back to the hopes and fears which you gave me, in my mind, I was already in the process of going, well, I'll try and give you enough space. And anyway, there's a post session after this, a masterclass in about a week's time. So if I haven't covered anything or you've got specific questions, please come and join me and we can deal with this. So this we can do in the post session. Technology fails. I've got a number of plan Bs. For a start, my colleague Leonardo is here in case I suddenly disappear. We've also got a backup and I've got a second computer. So fingers crossed that should all be fine. Guys, what I've tried to do in that first few minutes is to try to get you to think a little bit about what happens in terms of change, the environment, the pace of change, the fact we need to remove people's fears, and the fact we need to engage them. If I've put all that together quite well for you, then what I would like to do is give you some time to think a little bit about what I've just said. So I'd like you to go back into your Buzz Group trios with a very specific question, which is about what you've actually captured so far. And then I'll take any questions and I'll do an extra bit. So what I have for you is a Buzz Group question, which looks a little bit like this. It says, what's your key takeaway from that first bit? Is it the world after midnight thing? Is it something else? Please have a conversation. I haven't dealt with this one here, which says bubble diagram yet, but I'll come back to that. If you're actually on QUBE, just below that, there's a poll. So I'm going to call for poll votes. So if you're on QUBE, you could probably vote now. So guys, a couple of minutes and then we'll keep going. Okay, I think we're probably in a good place. If we could sort of pull all the things back. Any questions or comments from this first bit here? Any feedback from the first part? Okay, so any thoughts, any comments, please? Any comments? Great.
Quiet, everybody, because it's impossible for Eddie to hear when there's a lot of ambient noise in the room.
Sorry about that, guys. Any comments, any thoughts? So I want to move us on and look at something else very quickly. So are there any questions? Because where I want to take us next is the whole challenge of trying to actually learn in the world after midnight. And I'm going to do that by trying to share with you a couple of different things very quickly. The first is what I would describe as one of my favorite diagrams. And I'm showing you this so you understand how it works. It starts here where it says I have a high workload. Not you guys, obviously nothing to do, just playing around in Melbourne, okay, at the golf club. So because I've got a high workload, I don't have time to plan or to do or to be creative. So I don't realize how much work I've committed to, obviously because I haven't planned, and I'm halfway through. So I keep saying yes more than is realistic, pushing my workload up, giving me less time to plan or to be creative. So I come close to deadlines other people think are important. And because they're worried they'll miss their goals, guess what? They come and they interrupt me. So I spend a lot of my time restarting half-done jobs, pushing my workload up, giving me less time to plan or to do or to be creative. So now people know I'm disorganized, they can interrupt me and get away with it. Have you seen this particular loop happening to some of your colleagues at work? Okay, so it's quite strange that I should know your lives before I met you. And part of the reason is everyone seems to have stretching, challenging goals. I heard what the minister said, which is sort of life. And then these two here are quite important, especially this one here, which says many of the things I do have little effect. I want to share with you a very quick story. This is a story of a roundtable event I got invited to a couple of weeks ago. And I'll try and blow it up a bit for you so you can see. But I got invited to this roundtable event, and it's supposed to be about childhood obesity. And I sat listening. I don't know anything about childhood obesity. I'm not an expert in the health area, but I was invited just to try and make some trouble. And while they were talking, I was listening to all the elements they were talking about. They had experts who said it was about genetics, somebody else about food, it's about education. We had somebody from a supermarket said the kids don't know where food comes from. That's why. I listened to all this, and I started to create a diagram a bit like the one I've just shown you about having too much work. And the way I'm going to explain is I'm going to start from the bottom here, where it says human beings only need a couple of thousand calories a day. At the same time, accumulating body fat is like an old-fashioned piggy bank. You can put it in, it's almost impossible to get it out. At the same time, growth in most organizations is like a religion for businesses. They want to grow, companies want to grow, governments want economies to grow. At the same time, in the West, most people get food. So the market is saturated for food. And so because companies want to grow and everyone has got food, the only way they can grow is to give us more food or try and increase the margins of what they're doing. If they focus on giving us more food, then many food manufacturers will try and give us bigger and bigger portions if they can get away with it. So the net result is if we eat all of our portion, we're probably going to get more calories than the 2,000 which we needed. Now that's interesting, but don't worry about that. At the same time, governments know that cheap food is good because they don't want their people to go hungry. If you think about the riots in Tunisia, which sparked off the Arab Spring, it was because of food shortage, not anything else. So governments want food to be cheap, so they also work all their way through to make sure food is completely cheap. Net result of that is that people got lots of cheap food, so the portions are big, but they don't mind because the food is quite cheap. So what happens? As human beings, there's a lovely TED talk which explains that it's not that we like sweet food, it's because we like food, it's sweet. In other words, it rewards us for having eaten good stuff because we think we're going to get the calories. Net effect is most people ask their kids what they want to eat and the kids make the right choice, which is choose the high calorie food. So net result is if you don't understand enough about nutrition yourself, your portions are going to be too big, your kids are going to get big. But at the same time, to increase the margins, the companies have to strip out the good stuff to sell separately. So a lot of the food is pretty bland. But good news, we've got a couple of centuries worth of dairy, salt, and sugar industries, so we can add those in to make it tasty. Bad news, it makes you thirsty, and second bad news, the food has little nutrition. So a lot of people eat a lot, and therefore they're sleepy because they haven't got any energy, so they have to take caffeine drinks, so the caffeine wakes them up, it disrupts their sleep patterns, so they have no energy, so they can't exercise with their kids, so when the kids come home, they don't play football with them, so of course we've got fat kids. Now the reason I'm showing you all that, if that made sense to you, I know it very, very quickly, it's quite simply because when you come to understand the problem in the new world, you've got to realize there are different ways to solve a problem. You can get rid of the problem by just reframing it. We've got obese kids. That's an opportunity for us to play football with them. Or you can deal with the symptoms, so you send them for liposuction. Or you can actually do something like educating them about where food comes from. Or you can do a bubble diagram like the one which I just did, which shows you the whole problem. Or you can realize that the reason we've got cheap sugar industries is because 100 years ago, people were hungry. So by building a sugar industry, we could give people energy. 100 years later, this is now a problem. In other words, it's not just about solving today's problems, but making sure you don't create any for tomorrow. So when you come to work with people to learn collaboratively, you need to decide which of these 5 levels you are going to work on. Are you going to work on the level of just reframing, or are you going to work on the real in-depth problem? And that is one of the huge challenges which you'll face as people trying to lead learning and change in an organization. Which of these levels is going to be the most effective? So as I start to round off my session, I just want to take you to one last thing which I think will be useful. As I've said, the levels of learning are important, but the other thing which is really crucial is because you're in the health service, you need to learn in a very safe way. I'm going to recommend a short video I did for TED. So if you do TED and you do Eddie Obeng, there's a 10-minute video which explains something called smart failure. It's really important that you look at that one, because that would be one of the ways in which you start to move forward with ensuring that what you learn makes people's lives and health better and isn't actually creating far more problems. I'm going to stop at that point, give you a chance for your final buzz. So what I'd like you to do is have the conversation about what you actually are going to go away and think about trying to do differently. So that's the idea. So what did you learn? Have a buzz for about a minute. I'll capture any key points, and then I'll just finish with the last story, which will take about 30 seconds. So over to you for the last buzz. Okay, I think we're probably up on time. Otherwise, we're going to start running late on the conference, so I'm going to have to buzz it. Sorry about that, guys. Are there any comments or ahas or final messages for me?
Time out, everybody. Eddie's back.
Any final questions or comments or thoughts for me? Any ahas? Was it worth it? Did you learn something interesting? Something practical? I think that was what we wanted for our hopes. Understanding change a bit better. Any comments?
Yes, I've got a comment. Thanks, Eddie. We were just talking about the question of asking about fears and what worries people, and the fact that we often make assumptions about what people are worried about and put in plans to address those assumptions when it's not what they're afraid of at all.
Yeah, it's very easy to do that. That's a really good insight. It's really easy to do that. And of course, because you haven't told them also, they don't know you're addressing their fears. So you might even get them right, but they don't know. So they don't react properly. It's great. That's a nice insight. Thank you. Any others?
Yeah, we were commenting that your diagrams where you showed all the complexity of the problem it really highlights what most of us are dealing with, that problems are not simple, they are complex, and the solutions for them, they're usually beyond the sphere of influence of individual groups. And so the best way to look at addressing problems is to collaborate with other people who have an understanding of and a sphere of influence to be able to attack many parts of the problem at the same time.
Very nice. Well, the reason I draw these things, they're called bubble diagrams. And if you come onto QUBE and right-click on these documents here, you'll be able to get more. The reason I draw them is because then I know who these parties are, so I know who I need to start to connect with. Because often what happens is you might connect with the people you think are right, but there might be one group which is quite crucial, and you've missed them. So that's a good insight. Thank you. Maybe final comment, and then we're there.
WBA. Organizational development and wise for the problem. What struck me from this is that the other part, questions we should ask is what will happen if, what will happen if, and what will happen if, and just keep following that trail, because as colleague on the other side of the room said, I don't think we often understand the consequences of the path we set.
That's nice. I mean, you're making my heart go really warm. The line I like to use is that today's problems often come from yesterday's solutions. So I think we're on the same page with that one. Okay, guys, I want to leave you just with the final couple of thoughts. The thing which we use to solve the challenges we have in the new world is something really peculiar but very important, which is basically this whole concept of learning. Learning is the solution to actually making sure that what we've selected to do in the new world actually makes a difference for us. It's as simple as that. If you remember the curves, you're not going to get ahead of the rest of the world. It's very, very unlikely, but you can at least start to move forward. And the secret to remember is I've got two diagrams here which I want to share with you. The first one is this one here, and this is rocket science. Does anyone understand it? Okay, well, this is rocket science, apparently. The thing you've got to remember about rocket science is it's complicated to us because we don't understand it. We haven't understood, we haven't collaborated, we haven't taken the time to learn the new methods. But of course, rocket science is not rocket science. It's not difficult to a rocket scientist. So I'm going to leave you with that thought. Learning is the way forward, collaborative learning. I'm doing a post session. Again, as I did in the pre-session, I'll invite some people I know from the UK Health Service, so you might be able to share with them some thoughts of work I've done with them. So that could also help with the collaborative learning. I've been Eddie Obeng. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you very much. Thank you, bye. Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much. Thanks, bye.
That was fascinating, wasn't it? Took some really interesting lessons out of that, and for me, particularly in my position, the importance of moving fear and plan B. I confess totally my biggest fear was the technology wouldn't work, and I was worried I might be plan B. So it's but that was such an innovative session and so exciting, and I really think the conference organisers should be thanked for doing something that was so risky but so interesting and involving. A couple of things. We now have a break until 11 o'clock. So morning tea is in the Betty Cuthbert room, which is just outside of here. A couple of things. I know, and I apologise, the people at the back of the room are having some problem seeing the slides and the presentations. We're going to do two things. First of all, there are a number of spaces much closer to the front, which those who are challenged at the back, please come down and join other tables, and we are going to work on the presentation during the break to try and give you more clarity. So I am sorry that you were finding it difficult. We will give you more details about how you register for the masterclass session at the end of the day, but it's a great opportunity to spend more time with Eddie. As I say, we regroup at 11. And I would really encourage you to use your morning tea break to meet at least 2 people that you haven't met before. We'll see you here at 11. Thank you.